Welcome to the Pen to Publish podcast with your hosts, Alexa Whitten, author, typesetter, and independent publisher, and
Alexa Tewkesbury, author, editor, and proofreader.
Welcome to the seventh, I can't believe I'm saying this, the seventh episode of the Pen to Published podcast. And today we're going to be talking all about writer's block. Now, this is a bit of a common theme, and it is a slave of all writers. I think it's something that happens to everybody. So don't be alarmed if suddenly, after weeks of writing, that you come across periods of not being able to. We're going to be sharing some really handy tips that will help writers overcome it and nifty ways to get you back on track. So Alexa 1, what is writer's block?
Well, I think even if you're a new writer, writer's block is something that you will have heard of. But there are some scientific explanations for why writer's block may happen, and it's all to do with the functioning of different areas of the brain. But I don't think we need to get as technical as that here. Basically, what we call writer's block is a writer's experience of not being able to produce the writing that they want to. So not being able to come up with ideas, not being able to see a way forward, and pretty much coming to a standstill on whatever project they're working on or trying to start. Now, there are several reasons why this can happen. A writer could be going through something extremely stressful in their own lives, just making it hard to think clearly and get any focus or inspiration. A writer may just not be able to come up with a fresh idea for whatever reason. Then there's fear, something else that can block off our creativity. If we're afraid of what people will think of our writing and we lack any confidence in it, it's going to make producing a book a lot harder. And then what about external pressures? So work or family commitments or caring responsibilities, just being very busy. These are all aspects of life that can make sitting down to write feel too overwhelming, so we get blocked. Deadlines. See, I've been very fortunate in that the children's books I've written have all been commissioned, but the commissions involve deadlines. So sometimes deadlines can be good because they force you to get on with the job, but other times they can be paralyzing. When life's already full and you stick a deadline in, there can be this feeling of desperation, of panic, like, how on earth am I going to get this done? Now, in my case, a lot of my editorial work is also to deadlines, and there have definitely been times when it's all felt too much. And that doesn't really put anyone in a good frame of mind for a productive writing session. And something else that I can personally struggle with as well is fighting with my brain. There are days when I sit down to write and my brain just screams, no, don't make me do this now. And while I can usually eventually overcome it, fighting with my brain is a huge waste of energy and time, and it means that ideas don't flow and I get blocked. Now, my own experience of writer's block is as a fiction writer, when the ideas just won't come. But Alexa 2, does that happen with non-fiction too, even though you've got a fact base to draw on?
Absolutely, of course it can. However, I don't think we can say it doesn't happen to non-fiction writers, because it really does. But it's more to do with the fact that the author isn't 100% sure of what to write about. And I don't mean that in idea ways. I mean that in the way of when you have your plan, we talked about planning extensively in an earlier episode, getting all of your points or bullet points outlined is really useful, as it eliminates this exact thing. However, I know when I wrote my book, there were sections that I weren't 100% clear on, and then this caused me to pause and not write because I wasn't 100% sure of the facts, of what to do, of what to say. And of course, then you just don't do it. If you look at any forms of procrastination, and I guess you could call writer's block a version of that in some incidences, then it's usually because you don't know enough of what you need to write about. Now, there is another side of the coin to this, and that is falling into the trap of researchitis. This is where you only do your researching and you do no writing. I had a coaching client once who was in the research loop. He wouldn't get on with the writing part because all he was doing was research. And I would say that's also a form of procrastination. You hit upon the point earlier on about fear. And I think when business owners are writing books, they feel sometimes, who am I to be talking about this particular subject? So my advice is, when you get to a tricky bit, write what you know, even if you have to come back to it. Highlight it, but keep going. The key to writer's block is to push past it and write anyway, even if it's gibberish.
And I think something else that's really important to remember when it comes to tackling writer's block is that if it happens to you, and it probably happens to pretty much every writer from time to time, it's not your fault. It doesn't mean you're a rubbish writer. It doesn't mean you don't have enough imagination or determination. And it definitely doesn't mean you should give up. What it does mean is that it's time to get inventive with some unblocking. So some of these tips that I'm going to talk about have really helped me. And actually, I think they're things that can help you with your writing practice generally, and not just when you're sort of stuck in that blocked corner. So my first tip would be, give yourself some space to read another writer in your genre. Now, don't feel that you're wasting writing time by doing this. This is honestly what helps me the most. It's almost as though reading another writer's flow puts me right back into my own. But I do make my reading purposeful. I focus on the way the writer writes, so the style, the sentence length, how suspense is achieved, how dialogue is used, how mood is conveyed, how humour is created. It's almost like giving myself a mini writing lesson. And then that helps me to get excited and inspired for my own writing again.
I would absolutely say this is so true. And I think it's Stephen King who said in his book that he's got about how to write, is that if you come across a passage that you really like, actually type out that passage on the computer. Now, I'm not at all talking about plagiarizing or copying someone's work. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what he's suggesting is that you get into the flow of how that writer wrote their particular paragraph that you like to read. And I think the same could be said for business writing as well. If there's a particular business book or self-help book that you really like, go and read how they have structured their chapters. That can really help if you're in a bit of a rut.
And something else that might help is to forget about the book you're trying to write for a bit and try writing about something else altogether. So anything, it could be what you did at the weekend, the biggest success you've ever had, the biggest mistake you've ever made. You could describe your next door neighbour or your next door neighbour's dog, or even your own dog for that matter. Just start writing something. You could even set a timer for, say, 10 minutes and see if you can keep writing until it goes off. And what you're then doing is pushing through. You're not sitting there stuck, but you're getting words down, which hopefully will send a message to your brain that, yes, you can do this.
This is another fantastic way of getting past the block. What I tend to do with my writers is if they're having a bit of a period of they just can't think of anything further to say on that particular chapter, is we then go to their cover.
I love this idea.
So we get them to write the blurb or about the author section, just focusing on something totally different, but still moving forwards with the project. In fact, if you go and look at some of the covers on Amazon or go to a Waterstones now that we're allowed to, and go and take a look at some of the covers that you like, that can really inspire you to get that spark back. And all sorts of ideas can then help get the writing process going again.
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. I wish I'd known that before when I've been blocked. Then you could always try changing your writing routine as well. Maybe you always write in the morning. If you find you're getting blocked, why not go for a long walk in the morning instead? If you're not working, just to give yourself some headspace, and then sit back down to your writing in the afternoon. So that long walk, or however you decide to spend the time, might be enough just to free you up, over where you're getting stuck. And it might give you a chance to think through what you want to write next without the frustration of sitting there just facing this blank page or blank computer screen.
I always find, funnily enough, it's when I'm not at my desk or I'm just about to fall asleep that I get inspiration. And the last couple of weeks, I've been get up at 4, like I haven't been able to sleep. I'm tossing and turning. I wake up and I'm like, I've got a really good idea for a blog post, grab my iPad and I start jotting down some notes. And I think this is a really good idea that when inspiration strikes, it's really then important to write it down because you won't remember it. I promise you. I've had many a time where I've woken up in the middle of the night, had a brilliant idea for a title of a blog, even written the first sort of 2 paragraphs. And then obviously in the morning, I've totally forgotten it. So I now keep my iPad next to my bed. Also, the other tip is that if you don't want to write, is you can use your recording app on your phone. It's a brilliant way of getting you moving and getting you writing again.
And writing somewhere different to your usual writing space can also produce fresh inspiration. Now, I mentioned last week we were talking about where to write, but I really like writing in different places. Different places put me in different moods. And if you're taking your writing somewhere different, that might just be what you need to get you back into your flow. It's something about just having a fresh view.
I think it's the coffee. I mean, the coffee shops before the pandemic. Oh, the coffee shops. Loved going there. I know, loved going there to do my writing. I don't know if it's the bustle of the people. Some people might find that distracting, but I found it very energizing. I've written the majority of my third book, The Why Method, which is still being written in a coffee shop. It just seemed the right place to write it. So yeah, going out and changing your environment when you can, obviously, is a great idea.
When we're talking about changing your routine, there's how you write. If you write on a PC, maybe a few sessions with a notebook and pen will be enough to open your brain up again. Now, as we've mentioned before, you need to submit your manuscript to an editor or a typesetter in a typed format, preferably Word. So anything you handwrite, you will need to type up. But just the act of sitting down and handwriting, which maybe is something you hardly ever do these days, could get your inspiration flowing again. I always used to handwrite and then type up until time became more of an issue. And I felt I could think out my writing better using a pen and paper. And let's not forget, you can get some really fancy notebooks, which might just boost your inspiration. And other things that might help by taking you out of the frustration of being blocked are watching a film, listening to music, dancing to music, doing some colouring, decorating a room. I mean, that's a bit extreme, I suppose. Just something that take your focus somewhere else completely so that you don't just sit and stew. Do something to distract yourself from the stuckness. Don't even think about plot issues or character anomalies. Just give your brain a break. And then while you're absorbed in something else, it's very likely that your imagination will be getting to work behind the scenes so that when you next sit down, you'll have found a way to write through the block, even if you didn't work it out consciously. That's happened to me several times.
Yeah, I mean, Alexa One, you've certainly given us some great ideas. And hopefully I've given some really good ideas as well in ways of being able to get over writer's block. So the key is not to dwell, write anyway, even if it's rubbish. Try changing your environment or going for a walk. Try doing something completely different. Do some research or look at covers or write about something completely different, but do look at other books in the same genre as well. And try writing it out by hand. All of these will help when you face times of diminishing inspiration.
Well, unbelievably, next week is the final episode of this first series of the Pen to Publish podcast. We have a fantastic interview lined up with the incredible bundle of energy, is all I can think of to call her, that is the children's author and artist Kylie Dixon. Kylie has had extraordinary success with her first book, Ink Cap and the Nethers. She definitely knows how to generate a buzz. Her pre-orders were flying, before her book even arrived in her own house. And we're going to be talking to her about her experience as a first-time author and self-publisher, and what she's learned along the way and anything she might be going to do differently with book 2, which is already in the pipeline.
I know it's going to be a fantastic episode. She's full of ideas, full of energy, like you said. And we're going to be talking to her about the experience of having not had any idea of what was involved with writing a book and how both me and Alexa One helped her with that. And obviously now what she's doing going forward with her her third, because her second book was a colouring book. So we're going to be speaking to her next week and I can't wait for that interview. Anyway, so that's it. Hope we've got some really good ideas of how to overcome writer's block, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.